These days, most people know, or think they know, at least something about computers.
Do you know what computer software is?
I think they're the bits that you put in, aren't they? Rather than the actual computer itself.
What do you understand by the word computer hardware?
That's the main bits, isn't it? The television screens and the printers and things like that.
They pick up scraps of information from magazines, TV programs, adverts.
What are the important qualities do you think people should look for in computers, as far as you have found out?
I don't know. What's the extent of their programming, I suppose, and their easiness of use. Beyond that, I wouldn't know, to be honest.
I would certainly think about buying one, unless...
Perhaps the firm down the road's got one. Perhaps they feel that unless they get one, they'll fall behind.
I think if one's buying one for the first time, the question of memory is much more important than one's first led to believe. I mean,
eventually, one of these people is going to see a shiny new computer and decide to buy it. And that'll be their first and biggest mistake.
I think I just walk into a shop and buy one. I think that's how you do it.
Where do you think you'd go and buy one, or where would you advise someone to go and buy one?
Difficult one.
Do you think if you had to ask someone who was trying to sell you a computer some questions, what would be the questions you'd ask them?
Oh God. How much it costs?
Buying a computer seems like the easiest thing in the world, and so it is. Everyone and his shady brother-in-law will sell you one, if you let them. But buying a sensible working system which will help you in your business is a very different proposition. The business microcomputer is much more about business than it is about microcomputers. You have to get your business measured up for a micro, and that process may not be as simple as you think.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Do we have any help at all?
Yes, I think I'd like to buy a microcomputer, a mini-computer or something.
Okay.
John is a first-timer. He came into the store thinking he was looking for a computer. Instead, he finds himself talking about his own business.
But increasing.
Have you ever looked at any microcomputers before?
The receptionist is trying to find out what sort of advice he requires.
No idea what sort of software you want?
I don't even know what software it is, to be honest.
Okay. Do you do any...
Before he can even start thinking about a micro, John needs something far more important: consultancy. The receptionist's questions are simply the beginning of this process.
Well, it's a paperwork problem, really. We're snowed under and it's getting worse.
She discovers he has a large and expanding set of records kept on paper, that he's regularly trying to get information from those records, but that this is becoming harder and harder because of the number of bits of paper. And an important part of his business is a regular mail shot he does to drum up trade. If he could do more mail shots more effectively, then he believes he'd win more orders. Now, having worked out the sort of problem he's got, the receptionist passes him on to someone else.
I think the best thing to do would be to refer you to one of our salespeople, so if you'd like to go this way.
Thank you very much.
The someone else is a salesman who specializes in the area in which John's problems lie.
How do you do?
Have a seat.
Thanks very much. Right, first of all,
I'd like to ask you a few questions.
Okay.
By this time, John's starting to feel that he's having a session with a marriage guidance counselor rather than buying a computer. But in many ways, getting a computer is like getting married. John will have to live with the system he chooses. He wants the union to be productive, and if he makes a mistake, well, a divorce can be a long, expensive, and painful process. The salesman gets into the details of John's requirements. To help things along, he has a project plan. This carefully thought-out document picks out those important details of a business which have to be taken into account when considering installing a computer.
Right, so I'll be back for the demonstration 14th of July at 11 o'clock.
Great,
Okay.
I look forward to seeing you then.
Right.
Take your brochures with you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for everything.
Nice to have met you.
Cheerio. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Simon, I've had this man, Mr. Blythe, came in this morning. He wants to put his database onto computer.
Having worked out in detail what John's requirements are, the salesman discusses them with a software specialist. And they're still not talking about the relative merits of different computers. The software is now the talking point. The software is the computer programs which tell the computer what you want it to do.
Well, I really think that maybe database 2 might be overkilling the situation, because it's a very powerful package. What I would suggest...
Only when they've determined what software is best for John's requirements will they start to think about what particular computer to run that software on. The most powerful and innovative computer in the world is totally useless unless it can run the particular programs you need for your business. Software first is a watchword no buyer should ever forget.
As you can see from here...
What comes up on the screen is called the opening menu. The opening menu is the menu which starts off any function you might want.
The computer is the ACT apricot, and the salesman is demonstrating the software best suited to John's needs. WordStar, a popular word processing program which can be linked with a program called Mail Merge to do mail shots of personalized letters, and a database program called Cardbox Plus to sort out John's filing problems. Trust nothing until you've seen it working. That's another piece of wisdom which the computer buyer ignores at his peril, especially in a world where technological promises are cheap and mistakes are expensive. The demonstration takes about an hour. The secretary is here too. If she's going to use the system, then she has to see it first. Staff often know more about how a business works than the boss. The boss who suddenly imposes a new computer system on his staff one bright morning is asking for trouble. For it's the staff who, at the end of the day, have to make it work.
So, you're happy with everything we've shown you in the day?
John sees the system and thinks it right for his business.
So, if we now go down to the quotation...
Oh, right.
So you'd like to go ahead on those terms?
Yes, that's fine. Do you want me to sign that?
Obviously, for our records, we need you to...
John is now ready to sign on the dotted line.
There we go. Lovely.
Right.
Thanks.
When would you like delivery of the system?
Well, as soon as possible, I think.
Well, I think we can do it 7 days from now, if that's okay
Great,
by
that's
you.
fine. Lovely.
Obviously, after we've delivered the system, you'll have to have some training. So
Oh, right, yeah.
this includes all the details you're going to need about
Great.
the training.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Well, that seems to be everything.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Business with you.
And you. Bye-bye now.
Welcome everyone to the first day of your WordStar training course, WordStar Elementary. Now you're all looking at the machine that you've actually got in your
Training
offices.
is the next vital step in the process. Without proper training, at worst, John's company will end up rejecting the system. At best, they will not make full use of it. A software product can mostly be used quite quickly by the most inexperienced of users. But to get the full value out of its features, you have to be instructed in their operation. The people at the training session have a variety of makes of computers. Their common interest is in the software. This is a good illustration of the priority the software takes over the computer hardware. It's the software which you actually use to do your work. The hardware is nothing without it. The computer kit arrives, and the engineers arrive to install it.
So, with the main menu.
And eventually the computer is up and running, which you might think is the end of the story, but it isn't. The micro works. It does what John wants it to do, but success is a double-edged sword. For the micro becomes a vital part of John's business, and it needs to be cared for. The system needs maintenance in case it breaks down. As they discover they want to do new things with their system, use different software products, John and his secretary may need more training.
Hello, yes, this is John
They
Blythe,
also
John
need to
Blythe.
keep in touch with new developments.
Yes, what's happened is my printer's broken down.
A helpline with a credit card system enables John to get quick relief from the problems that crop up day to day.
01. Right. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye. Let's sending an engineer around straight away.
So that, ideally, is how you go about buying a business microcomputer. A very different kettle of fish from any other kind of office equipment. And remember, you don't end up with a miracle cure. You get specific solutions to specific problems. So you've bought your brand new computer, but what happens next? Do you have to learn a whole lot of new computer jargon? Will you have to learn how to write programs for the thing? And how will it affect the way you work? This is Bill. Bill is a new specimen of office worker. Bill is Homo cyberneticus, computer man. Every morning, the first thing he does is put in a disk and switch on his computer. The first thing his computer does is give itself a little test to make sure that all is in order. Although he doesn't know it, this is called booting up. Bill, in fact, knows very little about his computer. It's not all that different from the office typewriter he never learnt to use, except that there are a few more keys, and the keys can do more things. And instead of looking at a piece of paper, he looks eagerly at his computer screen. One word Bill does know is software. He knows software is what's on this disk, and that eventually it makes something appear on his screen. You've probably guessed by now that Bill isn't exactly a computer scientist. The computer is just a machine he does his work on. A lot of that work involves moving this little thing around. It's called the cursor, and Bill shifts it around the screen using the arrow keys. These things are floppy disks, and they're a part of Bill's life. Some disks are to program the computer, others to record Bill's work. He should keep them labeled and in order, but Bill is a very messy individual. The computer may have changed his working life, but it hasn't even dented his personality. The computer's brain is somewhere in here, and it's called the central processing unit. It's the bit which actually does all the work. Bill's brain is probably in his head. But that's another of those things that Bill need know nothing about. He does, however, know that the computer has a memory. It's into the computer's memory that Bill keys in all this work. Secure in the knowledge that whatever he puts in, he can always find again. Unless, that is, the electricity supply is ever switched off. Even for a second. All the information in the memory simply vanishes, and Bill has to start all over again. Every time this happens to Bill, he swears great oaths that it will never happen again. He can prevent it happening by periodically recording his work as he goes along on his disk. Bill knows that his computer has an operating system and that it's called MS-DOS, but he hasn't got the foggiest idea what an operating system actually is. It is, in fact, the set of instructions which tell the computer how to organize itself internally. One feature Bill does appreciate is that unless it's the right system, you can't run the software you want on it. Because his operating system, MS-DOS, is a very popular one, Bill has the pick of a large range of useful business software. But while it's a good start, the right operating system doesn't guarantee Bill can run a piece of software he comes across. It also depends on the amount of memory the computer has, and this can vary. The more memory, the more expensive the model of computer. Computer memory is measured using terms such as 32K, 64K, 256K. Bill doesn't know what 1K is, let alone 256 of them, but then he was never much good at PECs and JILs either. When faced with technical problems, Bill has one answer.
Look, all I want to know is, can I use the thing or not? Forgot what? Whose graphic card? Hercules? And who's he when he's at home?
Things are never as straightforward as they might appear in the computer world. You always need some little extra before you can do what you want. Bill discovers he needs an extra device called the Hercules graphics card before he can run the program he's seen in the brochure.
So, if I haven't got one of these thingamajigs, I'll have to fork out for one, I suppose. Yeah.
Such things are mere technological bric-a-brac to Bill. All he wants to do is to get into the things he can do with a computer. Here, for example, Bill is using a database program. A database is what you use to replace all your card index boxes and turn up valuable bits of information from your records. Here, Bill has asked the program to give him a list of clients who've said they don't want to put any business his way for the next 6 months. Financial planning is one of the most popular uses of the computer. Here, Bill is using a spreadsheet to compose a business plan for the next 12 months. He changes one figure and the others change automatically. This allows him to play endless what-if games with the figures. What if, for example, he suffers a 30% drop in business in the next 6 months?
Oh my God.
Another wide use of the micro is for word processing. Word processing allows Bill to produce documents and reports in the computer's memory and get them perfect before printing them out. It also allows him to create and store standard letters, the same basic letter which can then be changed and sent out as a personalized mail shot to any number of people. Until recently, you had to buy separate programs for a database, financial planning, and word processing. But now you can buy integrated software packages which allow you to pass swiftly from one job to another. And with this feature, known as windowing, Bill can worry about his business plan and the dismal state of his clients at the same time as he writes his letters. In this way, Bill has his business, its most critical problems, and his one possible solution all at his fingertips. Though just at this moment, Bill hardly seems to appreciate the technological wonder of it all.
Trade and commerce have always been critically linked to developments in communications technology. The 19th century saw key inventions, the telegraph and the telephone, enabling the rapid wiring up of society. This allowed business and bureaucracy to boom and grow. Since the Second World War, capitalism has produced vast office block empires. Multinational companies straddle the world, and government organizations have spread into every area of life. While such empires have grown up with the telephone, there is now another device on which they crucially depend, the computer. It's always been possible to pump computer data down the public telephone network by using a modem. The modem converts the digital language of the computer into the analog impulses of the network. But for heavy volume users of computer data, the public telephone network has proved inadequate. So they've had to lease lines from British Telecom and build up their own private networks, strictly limited to their own business. But now a series of developments means radical change. The privatization of British Telecom has brought more than a new image. The loosening of their monopoly means that companies can now sell networked computer services to everyone from supermarkets to doctors. Also, there's the coming of optical fiber. Thin strands of glass can now carry voice, pictures, and computer data far more effectively than the old copper wiring. But the most critical change on the way is digitization. As the telephone network itself goes digital, so it becomes cheaper and easier for computers to talk to each other. Banks and other companies already benefit from BT's special digital services, such as Packet Switchstream, its public data network. These services, though still developing, enable them to shift important computer data around the country. As the new System X exchanges come on stream, computer communications will become easier for all organizations. The impact of this on society is hard to predict. What is certain is that all of us will be affected by this worldwide revolution. A century ago, an undertaker called Strowger thought the public telephone operators were cheating him out of business by diverting his calls. So he invented an automatic switchboard. Exchanges based on Strowger principles are still in use today. This too is a switchboard. It is a digital PABX, a private automatic branch exchange. This, it is claimed, can form the hub of a company's communications systems. 40% of telephone calls go wrong. 70% don't reach the people you want to reach. In theory, at least, the digital PABX can now end phone frustration. But that's not enough. Feature phones must unlock the power of the PABX, encouraging you to use its facilities, such as leaving a message when you're unavailable. Then there's the call by name feature. Rather than hunt out someone's telephone number in a phone book, you can key the first 3 letters of their name into the phone. The system then searches in its electronic directory for names beginning with those letters. When you have the name you want, you just press call. Though you won't, of course, always get through. And if you need to be reminded to make a call or have a meeting at a certain time, you can program the system to jog your memory. The phone will display the name of a caller, and you can answer without picking up the receiver. You can also divert calls to different extensions for varying periods of time. This is programmed using the soft keys under the display. You can choose numbers to be dialed at the press of a single button, useful for people you call frequently. But for overall efficiency, important features also have to be built into the consoles used by the PABX operators. These operators are handling calls made from phone to phone and connections between computers.
Good morning, ICL.
They can see at a glance how many calls are waiting.
3117, thank you.
In the left-hand window, the operator can see what sort of call it is, whether it's an outside line or perhaps a trunk call. If an extension number is asked for, she can look up the details of the person on the extension in the right-hand window.
Yes, just hold on.
When dealing with inquiries, the operator can refer to lists of names and extension numbers. She can also call up further information such as their department and location. So we've seen that it's possible to use the digital PABX to manage people talking to people. But what about computers linking to computers? Some people argue that the PABX can become a communications traffic controller, and the existing telephone wiring become a highway for both voice and data. Edinburgh is the location for a pilot scheme which is putting this idea to the test. It's in operation at the city's regional computing centre. Graham is a software engineer at the centre. He's using his personal computer as though it were a terminal off the centre's powerful mainframe computer. But he doesn't have to be specially cabled up. The digital PABX enables him to link to the mainframe through the centre's existing telephone system. Pat is secretary to the centre's director. Word processing is a large part of her job. Here she's editing a document ready for posting. Using the PABX, she can transfer the document to a printer located in another part of the building. The high-quality laser printer then prints the document out and it's ready to send off. Pat's phone is also linked to the PABX, so she can use its advanced features. The Edinburgh Regional Computing Centre has considerable requirements for both voice and data communications. Its mainframe computers provide interactive services for the staff and students of Edinburgh University.
In addition to that, we maintain a very large network, computer network, both for staff and students to reach the mainframe services and also to reach some departmental services. A lot of departments have their own computers and they are hung on the RCC's network.
Computer communications too can exploit the features of the PABX. For example, if you call up a port on the mainframe computer which is already busy, you are put on a queue. You can either wait until the port is free, at which time it automatically connects you, or you can abort the call. In order to link the digital PABX to the centre's computer network, there are 24 black boxes called datasets. These provide an important interface to the higher speed computer network. But there are products specifically designed to link up computers, most notably the local area network. Many users are confused as to what route to take, PABX or local area network.
Our problem is, should we combine the local area network with the telephone exchange, use the telephone exchange as our local area network, or indeed put the telephone facilities on the local area network? No one appears to have the answer as yet.
But is one option to combine local area network and digital PABX to get the best of both products?
Yes, the hybrid solution of having both together is very much a possibility.
In Edinburgh's setup, the DNX 2000 PABX has a number of computer terminals linked to it. Each terminal has a telephone associated with it. There are small general-purpose computers linked directly into it, such as a VAX mini-computer. The PABX can therefore serve occasional users of data and some specialist functions. But for high-volume users of data, there's a link via what's called a gateway into a local area network, in this case called OSNet. So PABX users can make data calls across the PABX into the ICL 2900 mainframe computer or into wide area networks outside the centre through another gateway. The local area network provides PABX users with access to shared resources such as printers and disk storage. At the same time, the PABX provides the local area network users with access to important external networks. The PABX's role in merging voice and data may gain new significance when the Integrated Services Digital Network arrives.
Well, up till now, different forms of information have been carried on different networks. So you've had separate networks for data, voice and telex, for example. The idea of Integrated Services Digital Networks is to carry all these different types of information on a single unified network.
So there's a natural tendency now for organisations to want to combine their voice and data networks into one physical network. This way they achieve significant cost benefits and generally greater flexibility for the future.
I think increasingly organisations have to plan all forms of communications together. It's really a question of when and how rather than whether, because we are going to reach the point where only integrated facilities are available.
As he switches from one task to another, the worker embodies the link between telecoms and the computer. This, it is claimed, is the single most powerful argument for the merging of the two technologies.
Just about everyone will tell you that we're living in the computer age. We use computerized high street cash dispensers. Most of us get computer-produced bills. And more people are finding the computer in one form or another appearing at work. But one industry has only recently begun to make the most of new technology. The hotel and catering industry an industry which has the problem of trying to harness the power of the computer without losing the all-important personal touch with the customer. The computer manufacturers have been quick to realize the potential of this market, and now there are a bewildering range of systems available. But what impact is all this technology having on the industry?
I think the impact of computers is only now being felt in the industry. For a number of years, people have talked about the advent of computerization and the introduction of new technology. I think it's only now that employers, particularly the smaller businesses, are getting first-hand, hands-on experience of computers and actually are seeing what they can and can't do for their businesses, that the whole area of computerization is now beginning to take off.
One small businessman who is getting hands-on experience for himself is John Lawson. John is the manager of the Fox and Hounds pub in Oxfordshire. But as well as being a busy landlord, John is also a computerised landlord. Why?
I found at one stage that I wasn't really dealing with the figures properly. I was simply thinking I was making money without actually checking. So I decided to check out the figures properly to make sure that I was physically making money. Right. The computer certainly appeared to be the best way of dealing with it, simply because of the accuracy of the figures at the end of the day. I double-checked with my own figures for a month or two just to make sure that the figures cross-checked. And it certainly proved its point, because the figures are totally accurate, you know, provided that what you put in is accurate in the first place. Primarily I use it for weekly accounting and bar stocks once a month. If you were doing stock control on this system, you would simply enter all relevant data for the month, i.e. delivery notes, cash receipts, any returns to brewery or any other company, and a closing stock. The closing stock would be simply done by, you know, porting the machine around with you and actually physically entering the closing stock, and the machine then prints out a result for you, exactly what the result of that stock is for the month.
Well, it all looks very straightforward, but how does the system actually work?
Basically, the machine itself is a normal typewriter keyboard, which is fairly standard. It is programmed by a small cassette unit, which is on the right-hand side. Relevant data is printed on the printer, and all data is shown on the screen. And basically, it's as simple as that. If it's necessary to be used for payroll, it can be used. All employees are stored on the tape, and the machine prints out a payslip and all relevant totals for that particular week, with automatic tax and national insurance calculations, because everything is stored on the system. Right. And I also use it for accountancy, for basic weekly returns. I think the main benefit of that is that at the end of a quarter it prints out your VAT return completely automatically from the data that you put in every week.
John Lawson is one publican who's found a very simple system that seems to work for him, and he's very happy with it. But when it really comes down to it, is the pub the right place for computers, along with the video jukebox and the Space Invader machine? Isn't all this high technology going to change the face of the traditional pub out of all recognition?
I don't think it will change the face of the pub. The nice thing about the computer is it's an aid to management. It's not the be-all and end-all. It would be wrong if licensees or any caterer went around designing a business centering on the needs of the computer. The computer is, at the end of the day, a servant to the owner or the proprietor or the manager.
But far from steaming ahead with automation, many landlords and publicans are still fairly sceptical about the practical benefits.
I think the licensed trade in general has been neglected very much, probably because of the licensee's attitude in past years, because pubs were more of a way of life then, but now they're businesses and they do need to be computerised in some form. People are a bit sceptical because they do think that they're sort of playthings that you plug into television screens and play games on. But in general terms, I think that you should have a look at them, and if in doubt, contact other publicans who are actually using them to see exactly what the system does for them. That's probably the best thing to do if one is sceptical.
And what about the regulars at the Fox and Hounds? Were they impressed?
Yes, they were quite intrigued, and I think they like to see you gearing yourself up to the modern age, even in a pub, you know, and even the elder types are quite impressed with it, you know.
This is the Londoner Hotel, a busy 140-bedroom hotel off London's Oxford Street. They've been using computers for some time, but recently they installed a new computer from Kalamazoo Hospitality Systems. Why?
The Londoner was first computerised in the mid-70s, when computers were first introduced into the hotel industry. But we have found that after such a long time there have been so many advances in technology that the system we had previously was outdated, and we needed to bring in a much more up-to-date system that could give us the information we now require. We were particularly looking for new features that involved much more guest history and marketing information, also speed, as we find that we need information very, very quickly these days to be able to make business decisions. And we also needed to bring in to the computer the back office function, the account systems, which have become very loaded over the years, and we found that we needed to get that linked in with our computer.
Good afternoon, reservations. Mrs. Winkworth, okay, if you can hold the line, I'll just check for you.
This is the terminal used for reservations. The operator can take information on the telephone, instantly checking advanced room availability.
Okay, we can do that. The rate is £70, and that includes service and VAT.
And enter details of the guest's requirements.
14 months. Yes, we can put a cot in the room. That's no problem. Okay, can you confirm the booking to us, please? Yes, if you could just...
This information is fed automatically into the computer memory, recording it all on disk and preventing any possibility of double booking. That's just one function that the system handles. Another is the preferred guest facility. If a reservation has been made by a regular guest or company, the computer can hold their reservations under a personalised preferred guest heading, showing personal preferences such as type of room, meal requirements and so on.
Hello, can I help you? It's Amanda Hill. I have a reservation.
Ah, yes, myself. For 3 nights.
That's right. Okay.
Here we are. Would you like to sign there, please?
Oh, thanks.
Great, thank you. I'll just check your room number.
Okay.
The information can be checked by any of the front office staff, helping to personalise the relationship between the hotel staff and the guest. It speeds up service and enhances it at the same time.
It's 673, your usual room.
Oh, lovely, thank you.
And there's a key.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is the main processor unit. Several terminals are linked to it, and they all share the same information where appropriate.
The configuration of the computer system in our hotel is a main processor, and we have a VDU unit on the front desk, one within the reservations department, another one on our porter's desk, one in my general manager's office, one in the accounts office, and one in the housekeeping office. The porters mainly use their terminal to check guests in-house. For example, clients will phone up wanting to speak to Mr. So-and-so, and they can check through the computer terminal to see if the guest is registered and the room number. The housekeepers use the terminal first thing in the morning mainly, on which they bring up their maid's section report, which demonstrates the rooms which are vacant or departure or occupied, and they can do the work for the maids from that. Also brings up the number of guests due to arrive that day, and if there are any early arrivals, so rooms can be get ready for the guest as early as possible in the day. And in the accounts office they carry out the functions for sales ledger, purchase ledger and general ledger. The terminal in the manager's office is used by the managers to check on what is happening throughout the rest of the hotel. We have the facility to be able to check our daily count, that is the number of rooms we have to sell that day, how much business we have taken that day, the number of guests to arrive that day. We can also go into the accounting functions and look at any information from balance sheet down to an individual guest reservation. Our staff were trained initially by Kalamazoo, and the way we operated it here, we trained 3 key people by Kalamazoo, and then they are responsible for training all their staff themselves.
And what are the problems?
The initial problems are trying to forget your original computer system if you had one in the first place. We found we tended to think in the old way rather than to think the way this new computer does the work for us.
And advice?
I think that with the modern technology available today, any hotelier, no matter how few rooms or how many, can certainly find a computer is very justified and very cost effective. The advantage of knowing how your business is coming along and what steps you need to take are essential no matter what your size. My only recommendation would be to first-time users is to search the market very thoroughly, look at all the computers that are available, go and visit hotels where these computers are installed, talk to the people who are using it and see if it is what you need.
Up until I went to the bank, these screens etc. were put in, I didn't think twice about it. Probably the same as 3/4 of the population don't, unless you're faced with one and you don't think about it. People are going to have to use the machines, like we've had to use them, before they realise just how much it is going to change office life.
New technology is changing the shape of office work. For some, it opens up exciting horizons. For many, it brings electronic drudgery.
When the display writers were brought in, I thought, wonderful, this means I can get 4 times as much work done, you know, in the same space of time. In fact, it hasn't quite worked that way.
They do seem to want everything on the machine. It's just so much easier for them. And really, they can, when they're dictating, they can say anything they like, because it doesn't matter if they don't like it later, they can just knock it out. So you're the one left with twice as much work.
Word processing began as a job for purpose-built terminals. Now it's a standard feature on every manager's office computer.
I think in time that the bosses or our bosses will, when they have their terminals on their desk, they will be drafting directly onto the terminals themselves, and therefore they won't have a need for a secretary.
Does that worry you?
Yeah, we'll be jobless.
And when the VDUs came in, they decided to put me as one of the young ladies onto the VDU screens. Well, it was quite awful really, because all you do from 9 o'clock till 5 o'clock is input a number and it will give you an answer, to the point where I was very depressed. I'd done it for 3 months and it just got to the point where I felt that I had to go into my manager and say, you know, please take me off the screen or I'll look for another job.
The database can destroy a job as easily as it can make it. Clerical work can become an endless routine of keying in numbers.
Well, my manager was very fair, really. I mean, I explained how I felt about it. He agreed that perhaps I was, to a certain extent, wasted on the screens. And he has taken me off since and put me back on my old section, which is back to dealing with the queries. So I only really need to use the screen now if I want to know whether or not a branch's order was sent out and what date it was sent, because the screen obviously gives you all that information if the consignment has been lost. But I mean, that's just myself. If some of them that are working the machines went into him, as I did, and said to him, well, you know, I've had enough, I don't feel that I can do it, I think their answer would be quite truthfully, well, if you don't like it, go elsewhere.
And some of the packages that we've looked at, some of the micro business applications, the particularly common ones that are used, we have noted a tendency within those packages that they are designed for 2 specific users. One, the packages refer to as your most inexperienced personnel or the least skilled person working in the firm, who can do very simple operations that are actually using the computer in a very complex way, but the person's work is reduced to really just pushing a couple of buttons. The other level of user is the expert user, and these packages are set up in a way that one person will be brought in to set up that package and to program it and customize it for that particular firm's application, and the other person is just told to push this button, to push that.
In my office there's 5 girls, so there's 5 typewriters, telephones ringing, 3 computers and 1 printer, and there's a lot of noise. You can't work, you can't concentrate.
The coming of machinery like the printer makes the office more like a factory. But is the office as organised as the factory?
There's 3 computers linked to 1 printer, so 3 girls are working, but some documents are 120 pages, and to print this out, it's about 59 seconds per page, which is an awful long time, and 1 person using 1 printer all the time, takes up too much time. The other girls aren't getting their work done, hence arguments amongst the bosses.
More mechanical and slower than the computer, the printer remains a crucial office bottleneck.
I find computerisation a fascinating subject, but in a way it's very much the unknown. And you've got these computer whiz kids, and we have in fact got people in the firm who are setting up our computer and linking it all up to all our workstations at the moment. But a lot of the work they do and a lot of the work that's being done within the firm nobody knows about. It's kept to a sort of very select few people, and we are told at sort of fairly regular intervals how far we've got with our computerisation and what wonderful things we can now do with the computer.
In their haste to install the new technology, companies have tended to neglect its shortcomings.
I think the light reflecting from the screen affects the eye, well, my eyes personally. I don't know about anyone else's. I had to actually get new get glasses. I've never had to wear glasses, and I don't know if it's the actual work or looking at the machine that's done it, but I think it does have some side effects on your eyes.
Yes, I do find myself getting headaches, and that's partly due to occasionally the VDUs suffer problems in that they tend to flicker badly. That's sometimes due to simply irregularities in the mains current, but sometimes the VDUs themselves develop faults, which means that they flicker very badly. And when you're trying to sort of read through a set of minutes which you've written on the screen, that can give you very bad problems. That can make you feel very odd.
That's right. When we first had the computer, they've got a bright green screen, and to use them all day, some of the girls are having their colour senses knocked off balance. And as they were walking around, they were just seeing pink all the time. Everything was pink, which is really bad. And
but the gravest worry for growing numbers of VDU operators is the level of radiation which the computer screen is known to emit.
A lot of the girls obviously get pregnant and leave, and they don't get told anything about whether they should be using the machine or not, because obviously we've heard that it can affect your baby. So a lot of girls are quite concerned about that.
You're not actually being told what's happening, and I think in a lot of cases you're frightened to ask, just in case they say, well, you are going. I mean, it's like a lot of people who are worried about their computers and their health. I mean, they don't ask, because if they were to kick up too much of a fuss and say, look, I don't want to use this computer because I'm expecting a baby and such, I think they wouldn't be offered another job in the firm, because we're using computers all the time. So I think it's better to keep quiet at the moment. Just accept it.
And I disagree with that my accounts manager don't know. I think they do know. I think they know the pitfalls of social machineries, health-wise, work-wise, and they're just not letting on. I mean, I don't think they've got any excuse to say that they don't know. They decided to buy that machinery, so therefore, where their staff is concerned, they should have the answers, but they tell me that they don't.
You're being almost pushed into working in a different world. It's a keyboard world, and it's very, very much computerisation to the fore. And in a way, it is very, very good. But it takes away the role of secretaries, certainly. It makes your role in life or in that job very, very different.
one of the problems that everyone faces is how to actually design work so that people don't have to use VDUs all the time. For example, word processor operators could do other types of work. Their jobs could be designed not just around the word processor, they could be involved in other types of clerical work. Data preparation people who spend 7.5 hours a day in front of a VDU could ask for different types of work to be given work such as chasing up queries of the data that actually comes to them.
Oh yes, I'd like to see more variation in the work where you're actually dealing more from all different angles, the input and the output of the actual work. And I think on the whole, most of the girls will be more sort of responsible in a way. They'll have far more responsibility in a sense, and the job would be appreciated far better.
Somebody had said to me a year ago, God, I have to work a VDU screen, it's terrible. I mean, my opinion probably would have been the same as anybody else's. Well, why such a fuss? You've got a job. But it's not until you actually work one that you can see the downfalls. I mean, there are some good values to them. It probably will make offices run more smoothly, but then the staff suffer for it.
I think software producers use user-friendly very often to mean a system that basically is what they would prefer to call it idiot-proof, in the sense that a system is developed to be used or could be used by an idiot. It doesn't rely on the skills and the particularly human capabilities that office workers have, such as discretion and initiative. It tends to limit people's work to very rigid pathways that software determines.
It's made the work a lot easier and a lot quicker. But you do tend to sit there and think, what are these machines doing to me? I mean, how am I reacting with the machines? And at the end of the day, if you've been sitting on them all day, you can feel sort of as if once you've switched the machine off, you've actually unplugged yourself from the machine.
The girls are now inputting the actual numbers, item 3, 4 packets, all the way through the sheets. And I mean, you can order up to 3,000–4,000 items on one order, and the girls obviously get bored. I mean, if you sat there inputting 3, extend, 4 packets, 5, extend, 6 packets, you'd get bored.
It seems to me that computer-based systems could be used to develop people's skills, to enhance the work they do. It could be used as a tool, not only for executives, but for clerical and administrative workers, rather than it being used to take away some of the skills they have. Yes, it may reduce some of the monotony in the work they do, but there again, computers bring their own type of monotony.
I think we've found that there's an increasing trend for the more senior managers not to use office automation and to leave it to their secretaries. Thus, electronic mail and diary management, which has always been a function of secretaries, stays with the secretaries, and the manager himself doesn't actually make use of the keyboard. He doesn't type things in himself or look up things himself. He asks his secretary to do it for him. So we have found a trend for the office automation to be done more by the secretaries of senior managers.
Management are quite frightened of actually using keyboards themselves, of using VDUs. It's a threatening technology. However, they do have the discretion and often the freedom to use a small microcomputer, for example, in the way that they want, to gradually learn about that system. They also have access to other people within management who have the necessary knowledge and skills to help them utilise that to its best advantages. Whereas with clerical and administrative workers, often a VDU will appear on their desk more or less overnight. They'll be given 1 or 2 days training and then told to get on with it.
There was, I remember one person, a middle-aged gentleman, or perhaps a bit older than middle-aged, and we'd sat him down in front of it, and he was visibly shaking. He didn't say it to us that he was frightened of the system or anything like that, but he was. You could sensed fear in him. He was shaking.
Whereas if the software gave more on-screen help, if the documentation was better and easier to understand and not written by arrogant programmers and systems analysts who think they're only writing for other programmers, but written in a language that we can all understand and that graphically displays the nature of the software, how it's set out, how you move through it. This seems like it would give people a greater possibility to learn more about the system and progress from the inexperienced user to the experienced one. Otherwise, if this doesn't happen, a lot of people are being stuck in very mundane, boring jobs that they have no way out of.
Well, yes, because no one actually seems to be concerned about, you're just there as a number, you are an operator, that is your job, you work the machine. No one is concerned whether you've been sitting on the machine for 2 hours, if you've got a headache, do your eyes hurt. I mean, we've got a word processing centre and there are 20 operators down there and each one of them wears glasses, so it does mean, well, it seems to point to the fact that if you're working on them all day, it's no good for your eyesight, and no one actually comes up to you. If they've got something urgent that they need doing and you've been on the machine 3 hours, they don't say, well, can you do it, or do you want a rest? They say, do it.